Episode number 208 of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. My guest today is a patient of mine, Amie, who is just amazing, and her story is one that I tell people over and over again, and I've mentioned it a couple of times on the podcast and said that I was going to have her on. She's also a certified life coach, and she's a real inspiration, just how she believed in herself, had conviction, and I don't want to give away too much, but if you are going through the fertility journey, this is a must listen because her story is so inspirational and will for sure give you hope. So I'm excited to have Amie on today. Welcome to the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I'm Michelle, a fertility acupuncturist here to provide you with resources on how to create a wholesome approach to your fertility journey. So I am so excited, Amie, to have you on today. Like, honestly, I'm so proud of your journey. It's a story that I tell on repeat to so many people.
I'm
Like, it
excited to
just
be here.
oozes hope and inspiration. So without further ado, I would love to have you share your whole story, like your struggles, everything that you have been through up to now.
Yeah. So, I want to say, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm super excited to share my story because even now I have friends that are struggling to get pregnant, actually in Greece, and have no fertility issues. And, I'm like, I'll pray for you, but just relax and, like I tell a lot of people to meditate because I feel like that really helps me too. But anyway, so my journey, I, always wanted kids. And in my 20s, I wanted, when I first got married, I said, to I want to get pregnant, and my husband wasn't ready. So then I said, okay, I'll wait. And then when he was ready, I wasn't ready, and I wanted to travel. And there's always, women always have a clock, right? We're always running against our own body clock, which isn't fair because men don't have that. But I, said, okay, I'm like 34. I don't really want kids, but I still have a couple of years to figure it out. And I kept traveling. And then by the time I was about 37, I was thinking to myself, I've traveled, I've partied, I've done all of these things. And now I feel like I'm missing something, and for me, that void was children. And so I told my husband, okay, let's, I didn't say like, let's start trying, but it became of that. He's like, okay, what are we doing? Like, I want kids. And I was ready. I had just got back from China, Asia, and I was ready too. So we started trying, and I thought in my head, boom, I'm gonna get pregnant right away. And it didn't happen that way. And immediately I said, oh, it's my husband, it's not me. He's got the problem, right? Like he takes medicine for his nasal issues, and what he drinks a lot, and I drink a lot too, but I was like blaming him right away. And we kept trying. We tried for like a year, a lot, and nothing was happening. And I even had the whatever you pee on, the sticks you pee on that tells you like when you're ready. And my sister's like, take your temperature, see when you're fertile. And all this did was stress me out. Like I was, I got the sticks and I peed on them. I'm like, okay, I'm fertile, following those. And that didn't work. And then all of a sudden, like within a month or 2 months of me taking those, all of a sudden it was like error. And I'm like, what do you mean error? Like it's broken, the machine's broken. And I just thought it was broken. But I'm like looking back, I'm thinking I wasn't fertile, so it wasn't reading it, maybe. And so then I said, my husband's like, well, you should go to the doctor, And I'm like, I don't want to go to the doctor. I want to keep trying a little longer. I don't want to be stressed out. I don't want this process to be a stressful process. It's like you want to enjoy the process.
Yeah.
All these years you try not to get pregnant. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to get pregnant. And then it didn't happen that way. And the process for me was really stressful. I think part of that was adding stress to what I didn't know. The doctors were telling me that I had no eggs, and that I was going to need to find an egg donor to have children. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm having a baby.
What was amazing was there were two different doctors in two different
Yes.
countries.
Yes. So I had changed my diet. I said, okay, I'm going to stop drinking. I follow Anthony Williams, the medical medium. So I had stopped eating gluten. Not that he suggests that, but for me, I stopped eating gluten and meat, and I was eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. And, I'm like, maybe this is it. I'll stop drinking. And that didn't work either. And so I went to the doctor, and I had told you before that that doctor had told me, like, first that I had chlamydia, which wasn't true. They made an error in their office.
God.
So I went through that process. And then, um, and that same doctor told me that I had like a very low eggs, and that I was premenopausal. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I'm 38 years old. What? My grandmother had 8 kids. Her last kid she had at 42. There's no way, like but you don't want to believe it. But then they start putting these ideas in your head, and you're like, I mean, is this possible? Like,
Yeah.
he's a doctor, and part of you is like forcing it out, but then a part of you, he's telling you information about yourself, and all these years you believed what doctors say. And I'm like, am I premenopausal? And so I went to Greece, and when I was there, I had seen a doctor, and I took the test as well. And he did like an ultrasound, and he told me I had no eggs. And he said to me that you're going to have to get an egg donor, that, it's not possible to have a child. And he's like, I'll run the labs, but looking at your ultrasound, he did a vaginal ultrasound there at that moment, that, let's just plan for next year getting an egg donor, and doing the process. And I was like, what? And I was so upset, like, and he didn't say like it's absolutely not possible, but he told me there was a very, very, very minimal chance that I could get pregnant. And I left, and I just was like so discouraged, but I also still had that hope. I was like, a part of me was not believing what anybody was telling me, and
Hmm.
that's what had kept me going. And when I also was there, a friend of mine, she was there, and she used to work with a Chinese acupuncturist in Chicago that worked on fertility issues. And she's like, Amie, it really helps. Like, you should go to her. And that's when I started Googling. Like, I'm like, okay, I live in Miami. I don't want to go all the way to Chicago, but if I have to, I will. But let me see if there's anybody in my area. And that's when I had found you. And so when I came home right from Greece, I, made the appointment to come to your office. And for me, that was like such a heartwarming experience, because I had somebody that was wanting the same thing that I was wanting. Like, you wanted for myself what I wanted, so we were working together at the same goal. And you gave me a lot of the Chinese medicines and the acupuncture things, and I followed them. But for me, the actual acupuncture, the sitting in the room when you would leave the room, and just kind of putting myself in this mental state of positivity, really, really helped me let go of all of the negative that people were telling me that I couldn't get pregnant. And the meditations that you would send, through the channel that we were communicating on at night, I was listening to those, 20, 30 minutes. And this energy that was being created from those was really helping me get, like, just think so positive, and it made me feel good, and I can feel the energy, going through my body. And it was just like, I was made to have babies, and I had to just keep telling myself that, your
Yeah.
body is made for this, and you will have children. And, I did a lot of prayer too, but just staying positive was like what kept me going.
Hmm.
And yeah, I just, with the doctors telling me, no, you can't, like, let's schedule a time to do the egg donor. And we tested my husband, and he had like super strong sperm. So it
Yeah.
is me, I'm like, dang. And but then when we would talk, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, and I would do, the acupressure points at home that you would tell me.
Right, because at that point
And
I had to shut down my business because of COVID.
yes,
So we
yeah.
continued virtually.
Yes. And I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. And I had missed my period. And I remember taking a pregnancy test, and I'm like, it was negative. And I was like, damn it, like, how I cannot be going through menopause. Like, this
I
is
know
not
that's the crazy thing is
remember?
it was as if like the doctor's voice came back in your mind and it was like
Yeah,
haunting you like
it
this is it,
was.
you know.
Yeah. And I'm like, come on. And you know what? Because it was COVID, it wasn't like I was going out and, having some experience. Like, leading up to that, I had been working out and eating healthy, and I stopped drinking, and like, I just was getting more rest. And then during COVID, it kind of excluded everybody in the house. And so what I just really looked forward to was, you know, all day I'm like, okay, this is what the doctors told me. These are my symptoms. And then, being able to talk to you and keep that positive vibe going, and just also with the meditations at night, that really helped. And I had even went to, like, what do you call it? Like stones, like chakra stones. And, I had read things like talk to the fertility gods. And I mean, I was trying everything,
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to believe. I think when you get to that point where you just naturally want to get pregnant, and so I had remembered talking to you, and I'm like, I took a pregnancy test. I'm late. I haven't gotten my period. And you told me, take another test. And this was like the next week after I had already taken the test.
Right, because it was, yeah, a week. You tried it, I think you took a couple of tests, right? And it was like it kept showing
Mm-hmm.
negative.
Yes. Yeah. And I was like, the one that I took the week before that you told me, I had remember looking at it, and I didn't see a line, but I saw a line. It was like almost like the line that you see behind, and you're waiting for it to pop out. Like, you can faintly see it. And I'm like, man, I'm like really desperate, because I kind of see a line, but I think I'm just looking too hard.
Hmm.
And so the next week I was like, Michelle, I guess I'm premenopausal. No, like, I'm not getting my period. I don't know what's going on. And you told me I'd take it. And I remember being like, it's like I didn't want
I
that
remember
heartbreak
specifically,
again.
I said, I was like, I don't want to give you points to push for a period. I just, something like tells me don't do that. And I'm like, just humor me, go to CVS and get another one.
Yes. And I'm like, all right. And I remember I must have talked to you on like March 30th or 29th or something. Because on the 31st, I had some drinks, and I was like, oh, all right, let me just buy one and I'll take it tomorrow. It was like I was procrastinating because I didn't want it to be negative again. But like,
Yeah.
so I remember April Fool's, April 1st, I woke up and I took the test, and it came in. I bought the test that was like from some not CVS. It wasn't like one of the $30 tests. It was like $10, and it didn't even, it was like old school, tiny little pregnancy test, and it was positive. And I ran out to my husband, and I was like, oh my God, I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant. And he was like, is this April Fool's? I'm like, no, I wouldn't joke about this, you know?
Right.
And he told me, okay, because we lived across the street from the Walgreens. He's like, go to Walgreens and buy more. And I remember coming home and I took 3 more and they were all positive. And he's like, okay, go to the doctor. Like he still was like, like, is it real? And I remember making the appointment and going to the doctor and being, nervous because you're like waiting, like, okay, are they real? And he's like, he was looking at the screen and he didn't say anything. And we're just like, okay, come on. Like he turned it around and he goes, yep, you're pregnant. And we were at 6 weeks pregnant. And I was just so
Wow.
excited, but then the journey starts of being nervous for everything, like,
Yeah.
internally, like I knew I had a healthy baby and I knew like that everything was good, but then you go through all of those issues with the doctors and telling you about, like I was 39 turning 40. So it was like, oh, you're old and this and that. And I was like, I can't believe this,
Yeah.
like it was stressful for me.
Yeah.
And that's a whole nother story. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was, you just really want to, I think when you start that journey, you really have to believe for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the mind is a really powerful thing. And I think, a lot of times I would tell myself, okay, like I'm ready to have a baby. I'm done, with the stages of like going out and partying. I'm not going to wonder what if, because I'm already done so much in my life that I know that I'm ready to have a child, and just be open to that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it was scary for me, because a long time I was like, do I want? Do I not want? Do I want? And then when I was like, yes, I want, I remember somebody telling me like, you have to say out loud, like to yourself and to your mind, because for so long you convinced yourself that maybe you didn't want to have kids, and now you have to reaffirm that you do want them. And so that's basically what I did. I was like, I'm ready for children. I want them. And I would say like, okay, my little souls, like whoever wants to pick me, I'm ready to be your mom. And, I went through a lot of that and it happened. And now I have 2 children, and
Yeah,
had
so
them
there's
one after
more.
another.
Right? It's like,
Yeah.
so, and I'm saying this in quotes, the premenopausal woman not only
Yeah.
once but twice got pregnant. And so tell that story as well. So you had actually both kids stayed extra week, right?
Yes, both of them stayed an extra week. My son, well, it's funny because when I went to Greece again, that's where my husband is from. That's why I would go there so much. But when I went there, I knew immediately, like when I got pregnant, I was like, I'm
The second
pregnant. I
time.
knew it the second
Yeah.
time.
Right, because the
And
first time we just talked about.
yeah, the second time I was like, I knew it. We were trying, and I didn't think it was going to happen that fast. I really was thinking it was going to take more time, but I wanted it to be closer to my son. And when it happened, I was like, oh, I'm pregnant. And I knew, and I was pretty sure it was a girl, which she is. And because I was getting car sick and I was moving slow and I was super tired, and we were out to eat and somebody was cutting the pork and I was like, ugh, I was like, oh God, that smells horrible. And I took a pregnancy test. It was negative. I took another one. It was negative. And then finally I took the third one because I had been like a week late. And so the next 2 weeks I took tests and they were negative. And then the third time I took the test, it was positive. We went to the same jerk of a doctor that told me I was not going to be able to have kids in Greece, that because that's my husband's sister's doctor. And it was like
Hmm.
just who we knew, just to confirm the pregnancy. And you want to know what he did to me this time?
Oh no. Oh my
Yeah,
God. You would think he'd
she was,
apologize.
no, first my husband, thought we were going back to schedule to get the eggs implanted. And my husband said, no, we had a baby. And he's like, what? That's a biological miracle. And we're
Oh
like, well, then I'm
God.
a miracle that God gives you miracles. And he was a miracle, And so as he's doing the ultrasound, he couldn't see the sac for the baby. And so they took blood tests, and that's how they confirmed it. But my husband was like, is she pregnant or is she not pregnant? He's like, well, she's pregnant, but you make sure, he told me, when you go back to the States, that it's not an atopic pregnancy. I'm like, are you serious? Like, you can't just say, yes, you're pregnant, but it's early, so we don't see the sac yet, or however that works. You have to now put this in my head that it's possible that the egg is implanted in the tube, And I was like, this must be a joke. And I told my husband, I'm never going to him again. Like,
Wow.
I'm done, like, with him putting these thoughts in my head that something is wrong when nothing is wrong.
Yeah.
But when I was pregnant with my son, super healthy pregnancy, he didn't move much. But, when I was going to the doctor about when I was entering 30 something weeks, it was a group of doctors, and I went to see the one doctor that I hadn't seen before, and I go in the office to get my results from the ultrasound the week before or whatever. And he's like, everything is great, everything is perfect, baby's good, but we're going to induce you at 39 weeks to prevent stillbirth. And it was like he was telling me this like I didn't have a choice. And I said, I'm sorry. And he goes, yeah, because of your age, usually we induce. And my due date was like November 28th, so kind of around Thanksgiving. And I said, can I have some time to think about it? And knowing in my head, that's not what I wanted. And he's like, yeah, well, you can think about it, but that's not what we recommend. I said, well, as long as I'm okay and the baby's okay, I would like to have the baby naturally, And he's like going on about the statistics. So, of course, I leave the office. I'm super upset. My husband asked me what's wrong, because this is when I couldn't go in with him. I just had to go by myself because of COVID. And I told them, this guy, he just told me that they want to induce at 39 weeks to prevent stillbirth. Like, why would you tell a mother, a first-time mother especially, that this is even a possibility? So then now your mind is like, what do you mean stillbirth? Like, is that possible? Like, because of my age and da-da-da. So right away I go to Google,
Right.
which is the worst thing to do.
It's true.
You don't do
God.
that to yourself.
Yeah.
And it was so bad. And then I called my friend, who her mom was a labor and delivery nurse for years. She was retired, and I did like classes for her, like for the birth of the baby, the breathing and stuff, because I was going to not do an epidural, which I went through with that and everything. But I said, this is what the doctor's telling me, I just want to hear from somebody that I trust, is this a possibility? She said, no, Amie, she goes, as long as the baby's healthy in the exams and you're healthy, blood pressure wise and everything, let your birth go to term. She says a lot of times they do it so they know their schedule, and it's scheduled around Thanksgiving, and they want to make sure that, whatever, they plan their vacations, which is already like ideally what I thought, because I had worked in a hospital. So I did work in the labor and delivery, but I know doctors, and especially now, so many people are having births during COVID babies. I call them the COVID babies.
Yeah.
That, I could understand that. And so but I was extra cautious now. Like, every week I was, after, I think it was like 34, because I'm gestational, or
Right, geriatric. It's
Thank you.
unbelievable, that term.
Yeah, geriatric pregnancy. So now, like, at 34 weeks or 35 weeks, I was going every week. And they were giving me a non-stress test and an ultrasound to check the baby, and every week he was 100% okay, and I was fine. I was walking 3 miles a day, I was exercising, I was having sex, I was doing all these things, to like go into natural labor. I was only half a centimeter dilated at like 38. It was like, I think it was like 37 or something.
Yeah.
I want to say maybe 36, 37. And I was like, okay, that's fine, I have time. So I continued to walk, and then I went in again. I remember 40 weeks, and it was still the same. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my gosh. And then I had the non-stress test, like they had me going in closer. So at like 3 or 4 days later, I went for the non-stress test. And I noticed that after, like within that week 40, my son wasn't moving as much. So when I went for the non-stress test, they told me, we're going to admit you need to go to the hospital because when his heartbeat, I was having a contraction, his heartbeat wasn't going back up to the normal rate like they like to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, like I kind of already knew, but because of this whole journey, I was like, oh, they just want it on their schedule. I've gone over, now they want to induce me. But actually his cord was wrapped around his neck. So,
Oh,
but I
wow.
already felt like something was off because he would always move at night and he was like not as moving as much. So I said, okay, I believed that that was the truth. And
Mm-hmm.
so we went in, and that was a Wednesday night that I went into the hospital. And then they gave me Cervidol, which is, just it gives off a hormone to soften your cervix and open
Mm-hmm.
you up. And that didn't work at all. So I slept with that. And then the next day, the doctor who told me that he wanted to induce me came in, and I was like, oh, he's like, okay, we can either break your water or give you Pitocin. And I didn't want either.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, is there another way, without doing either one of those? Because if you break my water, I know that you're going to have to give me a cesarean section within a certain amount of time. And I didn't want to start Pitocin right away because I still wanted to try to go into natural labor. And now that the baby's heart was being monitored continuously, I felt more comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
So he said, well, we can do the balloon method. And I said, okay, let's do that. And so basically that's where it's like a two-way balloon, and they fill it with water and it blows up. So it kind of like meets in the middle and then comes out and opens you up.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, he attached a bag of saline that was like hanging off the side of the bed, coming from the bag that was in my vagina, which was a lot of pressure. And he's like, oh, it's going to come out in an hour. Well, 7 hours later, he had to come and
Oh,
take it
wow.
out.
Jeez.
But it did open me up to 5.5 centimeters.
Mm-hmm.
So then they were like, okay, we're going to start you on Pitocin. So I said, okay, what am I going to do? And then I had like a whole birth plan. I didn't want an epidural. I wanted to do birth naturally without epidural.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay. They said, we're going to give it to you every 30 minutes. And then when the night nurse, because it was later, she said, well, the baby doesn't like that. So we're going to give it to you every hour, a drip. I said, okay. So this is midnight, 11 o'clock or something. I said, I'm going to go to sleep. So I went to sleep and I woke up about 5 o'clock. And she's like, oh, how are your contractions? And I said, what contractions?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't feeling anything. And she's like, oh, wow. So I had called my mom, and then now it's like 6:30, and I started to feel contractions. And I told her, I'm starting to feel stronger contractions. So she checked me. I was like 6
Mm-hmm.
centimeters. And I had delivered the first time in Naples. And so I was, even though I was on, like I had IV and stuff, I was still walking like around the room. I was going into the bathroom just because it was helping me with the contractions. And I felt like I have to keep going to the bathroom. But when I would sit on the toilet, it felt better. The
Mm-hmm.
pain wasn't as hard. And so when the nurse was like, oh, it's just the pressure of the baby. And I'm like, whatever the case is, it feels good. And so that's when actually I lost my mucus plug. So I
Mm-hmm.
told her when I lost my mucus plug and she checked me, I was like 7 or 7.5. And right after then, that's when I started laboring on the ball. And then again, I'm like, I have to use the bathroom. And she's like, okay, kind of did like one of these. And so when I went to use the bathroom, my water broke.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like my body knew. So just the pressure. And when my water broke, immediately that's when my stomach started contracting,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like that, like when you're ready to push.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, my water just broke and I'm feeling like I have to push. Like I can't control it. It's my stomach's like contracting. So she
Mm-hmm.
checked me and I was like 9 centimeters.
Mm-hmm.
So they had put me in the bed, and then literally within, I mean, all of this happened from the time my mucus plug to delivery was like 25 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
that was like it. Yeah. It was
Yeah.
like hard and fast,
Yeah.
and then my son was born and he came out, and they put him on my chest and he was like, eh. And then the lady took him over, and I remember seeing his fingernails, they were like purple. And I was like, is that normal? But I guess the cord was wrapped around his neck, that they had to cut the cord before he even came out because it
Oh,
was a
wow.
few times. But he came out super healthy,
Thank God.
super easygoing.
Oh,
Like, yeah, it's just now he's going to be 2 in December 4th. Already it
wow.
goes by fast.
It
Yeah.
does.
And with my daughter, she was perfectly healthy the whole entire time. I remember they kept always looking at her heart. And I was like, why do they keep looking at her heartbeat? And they were like, oh, it's really strong. But, they were always monitoring her. I was going from 32 weeks all the way to the end every
Mm-hmm.
week because of my age again. They were checking the baby. I was always getting 11 out of 11 with the non-stress test and
Mm-hmm.
everything. And so again, the doctor again was pressuring me to induce at 39 weeks with all the stats. And this time, going through it the first time, I was like, listen, I understand what your statistics are. I do not want to be induced. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I want to go into natural labor. And I just didn't want people to pressure me. But
Mm-hmm.
then I got to like 40 weeks plus, I think 4 days or something. My daughter was different in the way that she was, like, I was the same weight, but she moved all the time. She kicked a lot. I was exhausted. I mean, like when you have another kid and you're pregnant, it's a lot. So I was like, okay, maybe I want to go in this time. Like
Mm-hmm.
maybe I will get induced.
Yeah.
And I was waiting, and still the same thing. I was like not dilated at all. And I'm like, what is going on? Like these babies just want to stay in me forever. So I had called him and I was already past my due date. I was almost at 41 weeks. And I told him, okay, I'll go in. And he gave me like a pill, like under my tongue, one of them a half or a quarter, and then the next one they did vaginally. And I went into labor very quick. It just lasted longer. And I was upset with myself because I didn't want an epidural, and I ended up doing an epidural. But I had, like, when I go into labor, I open up very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It happens like immediate. But I had been laboring like a while, and they didn't let me, like, then I had this baby in Jackson North, and they didn't let me walk around the room. The lady was like, you can't keep going to the bathroom. I don't want you to deliver the baby on the toilet. And I'm like, what? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why are you telling me how to labor? I remember the beds were really uncomfortable. That didn't help with the process. And so I was just in a lot of pain. And so I really wasn't in a lot of pain, but I was in an environment where they were making me believe I was in a lot of pain because I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do what I wanted, which was walk around. They
Yeah.
didn't have a ball for me where I could sit on the ball. And so I ended up getting the epidural, but I didn't need it because when they gave it to me, I had waited so long already. I was 7 centimeters dilated,
Mm-hmm.
and they shouldn't have given it to me
Mm-hmm.
at that point. They should have been like, "No, you're past the point." Because I think like once you're 7 is like you're past it.
Yeah.
Um, but it's for me, it's like a money thing. They're like cha-ching. But literally right after they did that, and I still felt it. It didn't take the pain away. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I still felt the pressure and everything. My daughter was born shortly after that. I would say within 25, 30 minutes. And with her, she got Erb's palsy. Her
Mm-hmm.
hand was like above her head when she was coming out. The doctor also had to my water
Mm-hmm.
because it wasn't breaking. And I really believe that's because I wasn't up and walking around, because the pressure of being up and walking around would have naturally broke the water.
Mm-hmm.
And so he broke it. And when he broke it, I guess maybe just her positioning of how
Mm-hmm.
she was, he had to push her hand back in in the birth canal,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And when she came out, it was not, her arm wasn't working, but her hand had, she was able um to squeeze my fingers,
Mm-hmm.
and but it was like very, it was limp. They call it Erb's palsy. And so they told me, oh, but everything else was healthy. She was screaming,
Mm-hmm.
and I just let her scream. She was like, it was adorable. Your baby comes out screaming. You're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay. After a week, you're like, okay, enough. But she was screaming, totally different birth than my son. But then we were going through the process of, what happened was her brachial plexus nerves were either hyperextended, which happened in her case, or they get tore,
Mm-hmm.
or completely tore. And they're like, we don't know what it is. But I said, well, her fingers work. And I have gone to massage therapy school. So I know enough that if her fingers are working, it's not
Mm-hmm.
a complete tear.
Yeah.
That, I said, it's probably hyperextended.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yes, it probably is, but we don't know the severity of it. So you'll have to go to therapy, and it could take 6 to 12 months to heal. And I said, okay, and I told my husband, because he worries. I worry, but he worries a lot more than I do. And
Mm-hmm.
so I told him, she's going to be fine. She has a very strong grip.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like a week later, I was talking to my brother, and I remember he was on video chat, and I'm like, oh, look, she's so cute, blah, 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 blah. And she moved her arm.
Mm-hmm.
And I had, one therapist, she came in after the main physical therapist, and she told us, don't do physical therapy here, or go to another place. It's much better. They specialize in this. But in the meantime, you can do this every time she feeds, do these exercises with
Mm-hmm.
her and tapping. And so I was doing that all day while I was
Mm-hmm.
feeding her, tapping, little stretches here and there, stretching her hand, because it was like where it just kind of goes like this, where it's like a palsy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was stretching her thumb and opening her fingers, and sure enough, she moved her hand. And I was like, oh my God, thank you, God.
Yeah.
So I knew after that she was going to be okay. But oh yeah, it's been a journey. And
Yeah.
now, I said, okay, I'm good with two. And everybody told me, oh, you're going to have a third.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, we'll see. But if I have a third, the next birth I'm doing is a water birth.
Yeah.
I'm not going back to the hospital. I want, from the beginning, I wanted a water birth, and I didn't, because my husband, he worries a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
And so I just said, okay, let's do it this way. But the next one, if I do have, I'm gonna do a water birth. So yeah, it'll be interesting. But that's my story. It's been a wild 3 years about.
Yep, very wild. And I'll tell you, I mean, really, one of the things that really, I mean, there's so many things that amaze me about your story, but the one thing that really stands out to me is that you had two doctors from
Yeah.
opposite side of the globe telling you similar things, and you were still
Mm-hmm.
like, uh-uh. I'm not
Yeah.
buying it. And I just it boggles my mind because it's so
Mm-hmm.
hard to be faced with people who are in the know, or people who are trained in
Yeah.
this and they're the professionals and they know better than you, right? I mean, no, but I'm saying like that's what is expected, right? You're going to the
Yeah.
professionals to know what to do. What's next?
Exactly. And I remember specifically when my husband Andreas got the call from his sister about the results of the doctor in Greece, the blood tests that they took to to get the exact results.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, he said that, he got the test results back, and that it's not possible. So my husband's relaying this information to me,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember being so furious because my husband's like, well, we get an egg donor, and that's great if people want to do that, I'm that's fine, but that's not what I wanted to do. And I remember telling him, like, you don't understand, like, the baby will be half yours and half somebody else's, but it won't be mine. And I want to give this a real try, like,
Mm-hmm.
I want to have a baby. Nobody is telling me I'm not effing having a baby.
Mm-hmm.
I'm having a baby. Like, stop thinking negative. Stop believing everybody. I don't need everyone on your side of the family being like, oh, she can't have a baby, poor her. Da, da, da. I said, it needs to stop. I'm having a baby. And I remember turning around. We were in a studio at the time, going into the bathroom, getting on my knees and saying, please, God, I want to get pregnant. Like, I'm ready for this. And I called my brother, and I told him, like, what had happened. And he said, Amie, it babies are called a miracle for a reason. They're a
Mm-hmm.
miracle, and it will happen. Just believe it. And I was like,
Wow.
okay.
That's
And
amazing.
yeah, it still gets me emotional because it was such an emotional time in my life where I just, against all odds, and everybody, the two doctors telling me no, and everybody else with their negative feelings, just still keeping, a positive, seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and knowing the goal that I wanted for myself, and for my husband, but I had to see it for him because
Yeah.
his mind had already gone to, oh, you're broken. Let's get an egg donor. And I just refused to believe that. And I really just kept my mind strong on, like,
Mm-hmm.
getting pregnant, and it's going to happen. And, you know, that's just where I stayed, and it happened. So I just, anybody that is struggling, you have to really truly believe with everything you have, and block out the negativity and what people are telling you is not possible, because I believe only you can tell yourself what is possible, but you
Ooh, I
you
love
have to
that.
believe it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
really.
good. That's strong. Let me tell you something, Amie. You are a strong woman. Like you really
Thank you.
are. You are a strong woman. And
Thank,
it's amazing. It's really impressive. Like you just know in your heart and you're just
yeah.
nobody can take you away from that. And I think that you
Hmm.
know that that could be the case because I think a lot of people have the knowing, but not everybody thinks that they're able to stand by that knowing. And
Hmm.
you took charge, you claimed it.
Yeah, and I think too, like, nowadays, that it's just, the Western medicine world makes things so accessible, right? Like, oh, you can't have a baby, you've been trying for 6 months and it's not happening, and okay, let's just start you on this, or start you on that, or start looking for egg donor or whatever. And I think, when you do get to the point like I was, so desperate, sometimes you're willing to try anything.
Mhm.
And I just, I think, first, before you go there, you really just believe in yourself and know what you're trying to accomplish and what your goal is, and just
Yeah.
really set your mind to accomplish that before jumping the boat on yourself, basically.
Yeah. And you're also a certified life coach.
Life and wellness coach, yes.
Yeah.
And that, it's funny because I had got certified doing that while I was, traveling through Asia, and hadn't started trying yet to get pregnant. So being a life coach and seeing, with clients, like, what I'm coaching them in, and their mindset, I had to coach myself in my own mindset through this
Yeah.
process, because it's easy to just say, oh, it's not possible for me, like, whatever. And I had to just really strongly believe and affirm that it is possible, and I had to take my own advice that I give clients.
Yeah. Sometimes we have to do
um
that.
yeah, yes. And it's, of course, it's always easier said than done,
Yep.
and that
Yeah.
was exactly the case with me.
Yeah. But you walk the talk.
So I did, yeah.
So
Yeah.
if people want to find out more about you, how can they find
hmm
you?
I have a website, www.emerickdavid.com, and that's my coaching website. So you can definitely, there's a contact us page where you can just fill it out and contact me. You can also email me at emerickdavidmgmt.com.
I'm going to
Right.
put
I
both
mean, so
those.
at gmail.com. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to put both the email and the website on the episode notes for
Sure.
anybody who wants to find out.
Yeah.
Amie, again, your story, like sometimes I do what I do and I expect to see the best, but what I see is just incredible. Like it really floors me, even though I expect it to happen, but it's just sometimes it comes even more. It
Yeah.
overflows. The
Yeah.
miracles
Yeah.
overflow. And that's what I feel like. It's like your miracle overflowed. And it's just
It
incredible to
did.
watch. And I think that you're just an amazing person. You're an
Thank you,
inspiration. You
Michelle.
really are. Your story's an inspiration. And I was so excited to have you on to share your story. So, Amie,
Well, thank
thank you
you. And
so much.
thank you. Thank you for being a part of my journey and helping me along the way because you were a huge help for me too.
It was an absolute honor.
Thank you, Michelle.
So that concludes today's episode. You can find all of the links mentioned on the episode notes. If you're enjoying these episodes, please take a moment to share and leave a review. Reviews mean everything to podcasters, and I really enjoy hearing from my listeners. You can also find me on my website at www.thewholesomelotus.com or email me at info@thewholesomelotus.com. I love hearing from my listeners. If you're interested and want updates as well as a free ebook on my top 10 fertility boosting habits, you can visit my fertility page on www.thewholesomelotus.com. I thank you so much for listening in and hope that you have a beautiful day.